rejected single father left the office in tears. Minutes later, the CEO came running after him. The rain hit the pavement like it was angry at the world. Marcus Reed didn't notice. He couldn't feel anything anymore. Not the cold drops soaking through his flannel shirt, not the sharp wind cutting across the glass plaza, not even the small, warm hand gripping his fingers so tightly it should have hurt. All he could feel was the weight of that single word. Rejected. His 5-year-old daughter Emma looked up at him with those big blue eyes, curly blonde hair plastered wet against her forehead, her little pink dress soaked through. She didn't cry. She never cried when Daddy looked like he was about to. Instead, she squeezed his hand tighter and kept walking, her tiny rain boots splashing through every puddle without a care in the world. She has no idea, Marcus thought. She has no idea that we just lost everything. 3 hours ago, Marcus had stood in front of the bathroom mirror rehearsing his answers. He had practiced for 2 weeks straight. Every night after Emma fell asleep on their second-hand couch, he would sit at the kitchen table with his notes spread out, whispering his answers into the dark apartment like prayers. He needed this job. Not wanted. Needed. The rent was 4 months behind. His truck had been repossessed 6 weeks ago. His credit cards were maxed, and his savings, the small amount he had scraped together working double shifts at the warehouse before his back gave out, were completely gone, swallowed by Emma's emergency hospital visit last winter. He had no one to call, no family to lean on. Emma's mother had walked out when Emma was 8 months old, leaving nothing behind except a note on the kitchen counter that said, "I'm not built for this." So Marcus had become everything. Father, mother, cook, nurse, bedtime storyteller. He braided Emma's hair every morning, even though his thick fingers fumbled terribly with the tiny elastic bands. He learned to make her favorite, scrambled eggs with ketchup smiley faces on top. He sat in tiny plastic chairs at parent-teacher nights surrounded by couples, pretending the empty seat beside him didn't exist. And today was supposed to be the day everything changed. The position was Senior Project Coordinator at Callaway and Pierce, one of the biggest consulting firms in Chicago. The salary alone would have cleared his debt, kept the apartment, and maybe, let him put a little aside for Emma's future. He had worn his best shirt. He had polished his shoes until he could see his reflection in them. He had even managed to press his dark blazer without burning it, which felt like a miracle. He had walked into that building with Emma beside him because the babysitter had canceled last minute, and he'd had no choice. He had explained to the receptionist, apologized twice, promised Emma would sit quietly in the waiting area. And Emma had been perfect. She sat in the big leather chair swinging her little legs, coloring in her notebook, not making a single sound. But the panel had already decided the moment they saw her. Marcus could feel it in the room, the way the 3 interviewers exchanged glances when he walked in, the way the woman at the end of the table, Carol Simmons, had looked over his shoulder toward the waiting area where Emma sat, and then back at him with something cold behind her eyes. The interview had lasted 22 minutes. He had answered every question precisely. He had data, he had results, he had references. But the energy in the room had already shifted, polite, distant, already finished. Carol Simmons had folded her hands on the table and said, very professionally, "Thank you for your time, Mr. Reed. We'll be in touch." He had known in that moment. That particular phrase, delivered in that particular tone, meant only one thing. He had walked out to the waiting area, taken Emma's hand, smiled at her. That smile, the one he had perfected, the one that hid everything, and said, "Come on, baby girl, let's go." He had made it all the way to the elevator before his eyes started burning. He had made it all the way through the lobby before his throat closed completely. And now he was in the rain, walking away, holding his daughter's hand, trying to figure out how to tell a 5-year-old that sometimes the world doesn't care how hard you try. "Daddy?" Emma tugged at his hand. "Yeah, baby. Your face is wet. Is that the rain or are you crying?" Marcus stopped walking. He crouched down right there on the wet sidewalk, not caring about his pressed trousers, not caring about anything, and looked at his daughter's face. Those enormous blue eyes. That little button nose. That expression she always had. Too wise, too perceptive, nothing like a 5-year-old should be. "Both," he said honestly, because he had promised himself he would never lie to her. Emma reached up her tiny hand and wiped his cheek with her palm. "It's okay, Daddy. We always figure it out. He pulled her into his arms and held her against his chest, squeezing his eyes shut, jaw locked, holding back the sound that wanted to tear out of his throat. We always figure it out. She had heard him say that to her. Every single time the power got shut off. Every time they had cereal for dinner because that was all there was. Every time something broke and he couldn't fix it. She had absorbed those words and now she was handing them back to him like a gift. He stood up. He straightened his back. He took a breath. And that's when he heard her voice cutting through the rain. "Wait, stop, Mr. Reed." He turned, running through the glass, revolving doors of Calloway and Pierce, heels clicking and then splashing on the wet pavement. Holding a folder of papers against her chest was a woman he had never seen before. She was not Carol Simmons. She was younger, maybe 32, 33, with dark hair that was quickly losing its professional composure in the rain, wearing a sharp red blazer that was now getting soaked. She was running like it mattered, like every second counted. Her hand was outstretched toward him, her face carrying an expression that Marcus couldn't immediately read. Urgency mixed with something else, something that looked almost like desperation. She stopped a few feet from him, slightly breathless. "Marcus Reed?" "Yes," he said carefully. She held out her hand. "Natalie Calloway." The name hit him like a physical thing. Calloway, as in Calloway and Pierce, as in the name on the building behind her. "I'm the CEO," she said, still slightly out of breath, rain darkening her red blazer to burgundy. "And I just watched your entire interview from the observation room." Marcus stared at her. Emma peeked out from behind his leg, studying this strange running woman with great curiosity. "Miss Calloway, they rejected you because you brought your daughter," she said directly, cutting through every polite pretense. "Carol made that call in the first 5 minutes. I saw it happen." Her jaw tightened. "That is not how this company makes decisions. That is not how I run things." Marcus didn't speak. He wasn't sure he could. "I read your full file, Mr. Reed, all of it. Your numbers from Henderson Corp., your project recovery record, the Blackstone account turnaround." She paused. "Do you know how many people on my current senior team have results like that?" He shook his head. "None," she said simply. The rain kept falling. Neither of them moved. "I'm offering you the position," Natalie Calloway said, holding out the folder. "Full package, start Monday." Marcus looked at the folder, then at her, then down at Emma, who had now fully stepped out from behind his leg and was looking up at the CEO woman with complete fascination. "You're very wet," Emma told Natalie seriously. Natalie Calloway looked down at the small girl, and for the first time something in her professional composure cracked open. A real smile, wide and unexpected, breaking across her face like sunlight through a storm. "So are you," she said softly. Emma considered this. "That's okay. Daddy says rain just means the sky is having feelings." Natalie looked back up at Marcus. Her eyes were different now, still professional, still sharp, but carrying something genuine beneath it. "Your daughter is remarkable, Mr. Reed." Marcus reached out and took the folder. His hand was steady. He didn't know how, but it was steady. "Thank you," he said, and it carried the weight of 2 years of sleepless nights, of scraped-together dinners, of braided hair and smiley-face eggs, and promises whispered into the dark. Natalie nodded once, professional composure returning. "Monday, 8 a.m., don't be late." She turned and walked back toward the building. Marcus stood in the rain, holding a job offer folder, his soaked daughter's hand in his, and felt something he had almost forgotten the shape of. Hope.
"Daddy,"
Emma said, looking up at him.
"Yeah, baby? I think that lady was nice."
Marcus looked at the revolving doors where Natalie Calloway had disappeared back into her world, and then down at his daughter, this extraordinary, impossible, perfect little person who had inherited none of his panic and all of his heart. "Yeah," he said. "I think she was too." He picked Emma up, held her on his hip, tucked the folder under his arm, and walked forward into the rain. For the first time in a very long time, he wasn't walking away from something. He was walking towards something. And that made all the difference. Sometimes the rejection isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the wrong door, so that the right one can find you.